Chat, let's talk about this. Probably the final discussion that we really have, because after this it'll probably blow over. But I wanted to talk about this. It's this is a thing that founder linked to me yesterday, which is this discussion on Honkai Star Rail versus Genshin. Okay, so that's like the topic of it. It's the HSR having great rewards, and then Genshin feeling like it gets nothing. Thesis 1. Genshin and HSR compete in different environments. So we know that they're both gacha games. We agree? But I feel like things have changed over 3 years. Like Genshin, in my opinion, has outgrown a lot of gacha games. Is there really a competitor to Genshin Impact right now? Not fully. Tower of Fantasy was probably the only game that really attempted to be like that, and it crumbled pretty hard. Like, it failed pretty massively at doing so. All other gacha games typically try to situate themselves in a very specific market. I think Genshin has tried and true. It broke free, right? It broke free of the gacha hell and became so mainstream that now Genshin, the name, is synonymous with anime. If you see a game that's like anime, people's first reaction is like, oh, this looks like Genshin. Oh, this plays like Genshin. This looks like Genshin. Right? It's not like it looks anime anymore. Like, we've had this discussion before, but I think that's an important telltale sign that it's become an icon of a specific set of a lot of games. So they go on to describe, like, most mature games compete based on the experience you get. Call of Duty, quote unquote, competes with League of Legends, but it makes sense. It makes more sense to compare it to Valorant. That's fair, right? They're both FPS games. But you could, in a very broad scale, say that Call of Duty competes with League of Legends on a macroscopic scale. It's fine. MiHoYo, I think, doesn't see traditional gacha games as a competitor to Genshin anymore. What do you guys think about this? This goes back to what I said about it outgrew. It kind of outgrew traditional gacha games. It's way bigger than them, and it no longer views them as a competitor. And so it doesn't need to cater to the same audience. Which is probably why we're getting some more disgust towards how Genshin's treated, because it looks as though they don't care anymore. My theory is based on this month's player survey. It asked about what games I've been playing recently. It wasn't focused on other big budget gacha games. Instead, it cared more about whether you were playing AAA tier action adventure games like Destiny 2, GTA 5, and Ark. None of these games have a strong focus on giving away free stuff the way mobile games do. It's fair. I don't check the surveys, so I don't know. But I'm more inclined to believe someone that probably did take the survey. And if they are asking things like this, that means that they are interested in the sentiment regarding those games, which is totally fine. And then we get the who in the gacha space compares more directly. Tower of Fantasy. It's such a non-factor that it doesn't qualify as competition. That's a sad truth. It's the sad truth. It started off hot, but then once you kind of scraped off the surface of Tower of Fantasy, unfortunately, it didn't really have much to stick by, especially in the Western audience. I think Tower of Fantasy is still really strong in the Chinese audience, right? I think that's where TOF is still really, really successful. It has a really strong monetization kind of, growth in CN. That's from what I understand. Like, it's basically dead in Western. You guys primarily shouldn't care about this, so it's fine. HSR is turn-based with auto battle. So we have a lot more games in this industry that are known to give free stuff. So that's fine. Companies will typically benchmark their products against competitors to make important decisions. If MiHoYo doesn't think other gacha games compete with Genshin, then all their subsequent decisions will flow from there. Thesis 2, free-to-play players aren't as valuable for Genshin as they were before. Does this hurt you guys? Whether it's true or not, when you read that statement, does this hurt your ego a little bit? I feel like there is a certain community of individuals who might feel, how do I phrase this? Unappreciated. Because feeling unappreciated is why you would take up your pitchfork. Does that make sense? I feel like it is inherently a sad truth about Genshin, where they initially did cater to a lot of free-to-play players because they needed to grow the game. And then later on, they realized that they don't need to cater because a lot of the gain that they have is because there is no competition, and they still do, you know, they still work on better trailers. They still work on pretty cool character designs. They're like doing stuff to keep the current player base spending money. We have a very raw data point on that, and I think that a lot of you guys can agree. There's no debate whatsoever. Farina's release. 100% Farina's release showed that they don't care. They're only finding ways to keep you, the current people, investing money in the game. A vast majority of the people who pulled for Farina originally didn't play Genshin. I mean, originally played Genshin, but then stopped playing for a little while. You know? So this is a legitimate thing that I think is a good topic. So what is an F2P player's worth to a games company? Basically, this is a short way to saying the value. Your value on a free player is functionally zero by definition, since they spend nothing. That's fair. So all the value accrues from intangible benefits. In the freemium model, this will typically be due to reasons such as word of mouth marketing, which I think is really strong. Word of mouth marketing nowadays is incredibly strong. A really strong example of word of mouth marketing recently is Palworld. I think that is a huge game that blew up because of word of mouth. People talking about it, how like, holy shit, yo, this is a Pokemon open world. You should try it out. I didn't know Palworld was gonna be big. I didn't even know Palworld was on the fucking table until it was already in early access. And then I heard about it from other people, and then I tried it out, and I'm like, holy shit, this is a nice game. So really strong. Word of mouth marketing is really strong. Also, this is an important thing when it comes to social media, Instagram. Just talking about the game is a really strong suit right now that some people don't understand. If you put a lot of passion into something, people will talk about it. Oh, is it lifetime value? Okay, that might be a better descriptor. Thank you for the... If that is, no matter what it is, it's some form of value, which is fine. Your lifetime value on a free player is functionally zero. That also makes sense. That makes sense. Providing a large player base to sustain co-op, providing a community that leads to increased retention of people who actually make you money, and finding ways to convert free-to-play players to actual paying customers. So all of these are pretty nebulous and difficult to measure. So a lot of decision-making, even if you have data, has a lot of gut feel involved in it. This makes sense. Directionally, I feel kind of confident saying that F2P players are less valuable today in 2024 than in 2019. It's just a fact of life with most mature products. That is life. A lot of cash grabs nowadays really have you try to spend money as quickly as possible. And also, I think the barrier of entry nowadays is way more expensive than it was before. You have subscription-based stuff becoming more expensive. It's no longer $5 per month. Everything is at minimum like $8 to $10 to $20 per month. Watching a free TV show doesn't exist anymore. If you want to watch a well-produced TV show, movie, series, it is on a it is blocked by a subscription unless you pirate it, right? Word of mouth. Most people who haven't heard of Genshin aren't people who your player will reach. It's saying who hasn't heard about WoW, League, Fortnite, etc. This is true. I think at this point, chat, Genshin has already done their big marketing. Do you guys remember the first couple years? They had the worst advertisements known to mankind. Holy shit, if you saw a Genshin ad, it made you cringe. And that at least I think has decreased a little bit. But at the very beginning, it was on YouTube, you know, it was on like Instagram, TikTok, shit like that. They were such bad ads. But the reason why they were so bad was probably to get people talking about it. It's like, oh my god, this shit is so bad. Look at this. It's so stupid. They also spend a bunch on public events, right? I believe they had a lot of banners, public events. They were spending a lot of like they spent a lot on exterior marketing, which is like as a person IRL, if you went to popular like cityscapes, sometimes they would have like events that had like a bunch of like Genshin plaster. Because I remember San Francisco had Genshin shit plastered around the whole city. I don't fucking know why, but they tried, I guess. Yeah, so that I think is much less now. I think a lot of people know about Genshin to this day and age. Co-op is frankly non-existent. We can say that as a fact. If there's no think about this, chat. They created co-op at the very beginning of the game. Co-op has not changed in 3 years. There will be nothing happening to co-op. We can almost be confident in saying that. If the game doesn't add anything to a feature of the game that had hype initially, they're not going to add anything for that. Your most critical retention of whales for the increased retention of people is sunk cost fallacy. It takes a lot for a whale to walk about from thousands or more sunk into an account, and if they were going to quit, it's going to be a big reason than having a large community probably won't solve. I think people would generally agree now in this day and age that if you spend like more than $100 or $200, you feel an urge to play more. Or you've already felt that way in a previous gacha and understand that's just how it is. I feel like people who are newer to Genshin and have spent money on the game probably played it longer than they wanted to play it. I'm not saying that they're still playing it. I think one thing you guys need to understand is people played longer than they wanted to play it because they spent money on it. Because like you guys probably would have quit way earlier if you didn't have a sunk cost fallacy or you have big self-control. Anyways, in general, I think this is generally true. Paying customer conversion. The recent Sony leak. Genshin Impact revenue in PlayStation is at $1 billion in its first 2 years based on a Sony internal presentation.
Sony got hacked. A lot of financial data was released, which showed that conversion, yeah.
Well, that means it's probably true. $1 billion in its first 2 years. I think that is why it's so insulting about the Lantern Right rewards. So I feel like I'm gonna have a hot take here, but it's something that I think that is important to say. If you are younger, it'll probably make you upset. If you're older, you probably understand. The success of a game has nothing to do with if a game gives you rewards or not. There is no correlation. I promise you. In the grand scheme of things, if a game gives you a reward and it tells you that it's because they appreciate you, that's to make you feel good. It doesn't actually have anything to do with how successful the game was. Well, obviously, companies don't care, but I do agree that the way they said it in the live stream was a slap in the face. We can all agree on that. The way they said that, we appreciate you guys so much, here's 3 fates. No, fuck you, bitch. They could have just given three fates. Didn't say anything. We'd be like, okay, cool. Get 3 fates. Okay? Anyways, let's continue. I think this is kind of insane because I think how big is PlayStation? I feel like PlayStation has to be less than 25% of the player base, but they still spend $1 billion in the game. Kind of insane, right? I feel like I don't know how big PlayStation is. I don't feel like it.
Just be upfront with us, Hoyo, and say frick to our faces.
Honestly, if we're being real, I don't want Hoyo to be honest and say frick you. I want Hoyo to realize that their game is still popular and try to like at least make some sort of like investment to its quality of life. You know, like I wish. Here's the thing. Here's the unfortunate truth. I feel like they don't need to, right? Hoyo doesn't need to invest more in their Genshin dev, because Genshin dev team I think has solidified on the way that they're doing things. They're making really cool trailers. They already have their character development plans set out for a couple months ahead. They already, like, that's why we have leaks in the first place, right? Like, they already know what their roadmap is. Like, they don't need to do certain things. That's probably why. I just feel like, yeah. I mean, do they want it to die so players focus on other games? Well, that's what this post is kind of getting to. And I feel like it's kind of cooking with it. This
the whole
post
additional
later
wishes in the
on
mail
says
thing
that
said last Lantern Right stream.
Why
wasn't there
Hoyoverse
uproar then?
is inclined to sacrifice some of its Genshin player base so that they split them off into Honkai Star Rail. That's what this post later on gets into with their thesis of like why they're making certain decisions. Because we can all agree that it feels like Genshin's bleeding. I'm even saying this, right? Like now, Genshin definitely feels like it's bleeding. It's bleeding a lot. Like the player base doesn't feel very happy about the way things are. So they just don't think a relevant amount of people will leave if you give free rewards, and that is the sad truth. Giving 3 pulls versus giving 5 pulls versus giving 10 pulls, I don't think will change the vast majority of the player base. But the way that they said it makes you feel, it makes you feel like, man, this company, yeah. Anyways, looking at Google Trends says otherwise. See, that's the thing. Like, the stuff that's been going on is so sensational. People are going off of what other people are saying. They believe it like sheep. They don't do any of their own research. They don't be like, okay, are the numbers actually going down? Right? Like, is the sentiment bad? Yes, absolutely. The sentiment's shit. Okay? Like, I think we all feel very upset. I'm going to keep reiterating this because I feel like people really want to find things to pick. We need to remember that our feelings are still very negative about what's been going on. That does not change trends, data, stuff like that. All those numbers still operate even if you punch them, all right? If you punch the number 1, it's not going to change to the number 2. Anyways, let's continue. I don't know how much an F2P player is truly worth unless tomorrow Uncle XQ, I don't know what the fuck this is, dumps several gigabytes of MiHoYo's Oracle OLAP cubes. But I feel confident saying that at this point it's less than before. Sure. What do you do if you have a large population of F2P players you don't have as much of a use for? See, this is huge, chat. What do you do if you have a large population of F2P players you don't have as much of a use for? You turn them into something else. You turn the people that really dislike how Genshin's run, and you give them something that's really pretty and shiny, and very loving to free-to-play players. What do we have right now that's really shiny and loving to free-to-play players? That's right. Honkai Star Rail. Honkai Star Rail is doing everything for quality of life for the players. They're listening to their community. They're giving so many free pulls. They gave you a free 5-star limited character that you could pull for. It's strong. It's really shiny. It makes you feel good. It makes you feel really full. It makes you feel really nice. So managing a portfolio business means MiHoYo wants to move FTP players to HSR, blah, blah, blah. So your FTP players are beneficial at the start of a game's lifecycle when you're still growing and want to spread word of mouth and get the whales invested enough that they get sunk cost fallacied. You know, a really difficult combination to get out of when you have a combination like this, when you have whales invested that they get sunk cost fallacied, and you also get content creators who blew up so big because of this game that it becomes their job. Those content creators also find it very difficult to detach from the game. Can we agree on that? Because even for someone like me who makes a living now off of playing these type of games, Genshin is my main source of income. It's really hard to just not produce content for that game. And so they feel attached, they feel linked, and they still post the same stuff that guess what? They originally had passion for it. They originally had passion in making guides for Genshin, and they love the game, and they probably still do. But I guarantee nowadays they do it because it gets so many views, it generates revenue, people really want to do this for a living, etc., right? And this loop is very, very hard to break. For the people that are already invested in Genshin, it's so difficult to break from people who constantly post guides on day one, who showcase the characters. And here's the sad truth, chat. I'm part of the problem. I am part of that problem. I can't detach. I am a source. I am a fucking hamster in that wheel. And you can blame me. And I can't it's true. I can't do anything about it. It is a legit huge part of my livelihood, and I am a problem with preventing whales from getting out of the game. I mean, the only thing that I can really do, chat, is try to make content for other games, but it's definitely not going to be as successful. But I'm interested in it because I've already, generated a nice living, and so that I like don't have the pressure of staying. So like I'm hoping that other games are also really cool, that they have big audiences on YouTube, but I can't guarantee that. It's not like there's a problem, just like always. Why would greedy gadget companies be good all of a sudden? Yeah, they don't have any reason to. Yeah, but anyone who blames you is childish. It's your livelihood and it's stupid to expect you to just leave it. Yeah, there's nothing from like that is true. But we have other people who don't need to rely on Genshin as a main source of income, right? They can do different stuff. And like I understand that advocating for a change is good, right? But when that change becomes toxic and spreads negativity, it's really hard to stop the boundary, right? While I really enjoy your content, you would never be a factor in my choice to continue playing or not, and it should not be. It should not be. Let's continue. Your FTP players are in Genshin, but you like them in HSR. What do? You deliberately turn them off Genshin and into HSR. Pain. Part of running a portfolio means that you need to make decisions that are overall beneficial for your portfolio, but internally result in trade-offs between products. This also has other benefits for MiHoYo. MiHoYo does not want to be a one-product company. That is, I think anyone can agree. You don't want all your eggs in one basket. They have Honkai Impact. They have Genshin Impact. Honkai Star Rail. They're making ZZZ. They probably want a lot more stuff. They want to keep on building their universe, etc. Makes sense. Better to have 2+ games than both achieve. Better to have 2 games that both achieve 75% than be relying on one game, Genshin, that acts at 100%. And yes, that means you accept the 25% loss in efficiency, brand value, and player satisfaction. Genshin's biggest risk is itself. Because you're so big, you have greater risk from players churning than upside from getting new players, so you need a churn strategy. Here, the answer seems to be go play HSR. It's got the MiHoYo polish you love so much, but has stuff like QoL you wish Genshin had. Please don't try a different game not made by us. How brutal is this? Whether it's true or not, how brutal is a statement like that? How brutal is that? Like whether, chat, it does not matter if this is correct or not. It's the fact that this sentiment exists. This feeling exists, right? Thesis 2B. Free marketing is for poor companies. All right, here we get into capitalism. Are you ready, guys? Word of mouth and online hype are critical for companies when they are starting up and don't have access to a ton of cash, but need to build up a loyal customer base. That is Genshin at the beginning. But it is telling that once companies do have cash, they go back to all the traditional marketing methods. MiHoYo does not need free stuff to pay for its marketing. It pays several of tens of millions in real money for its actual marketing budget. This is also helpful because, as I said before, Genshin is probably big enough where everyone who would have heard about the game naturally has already heard about it. Your new growth target audience isn't in the traditional gaming sphere anymore, so free stuff isn't important, and this target audience probably doesn't even know what a gacha is. This is all primarily, like, accurate, right? It's all primarily accurate. If you think from a strictly corporate standpoint, it's mostly accurate. It does have a lot of... It's very emotionless, though. What if they're doing with Genshin HSR? Where will ZZZ fit into this? For people who don't want to play both Genshin and HSR, I'm not sure. I think we have to make that decision once ZZZ is fully released. They said they were going to put it on Switch. I wonder what happened to that. That will probably need a bit more research. I cannot answer that because I'm not thinking about that right now. But if I had to think of a reason, I could probably find a reason. Whether that reason is correct or not remains totally up to you, right? Yeah, I'm not sure. Switch may have been like too niche or something. The hardware may not have been strong enough. And I think that's a pretty big one, chat. I think it's a pretty big one that people don't really talk about. Your phone can barely run Genshin as it is, and phones are very much definitely stronger than a Switch. So I don't know. It might have been a hardware limitation. They might have tested on the Switch and be like, "Holy shit, this hardware sucks." Who knows? I have no idea. I can't answer that accurately. Thesis 3, the status quo is the least risk-averse option. All companies need to strike a balance between preserving their current revenue streams and making risky decisions that could make them more money, but also could lose them money. Large companies are risk-averse. They don't like making big changes for the sake of making big changes or taking on large risks. They have more to lose if things go wrong. Large companies can sometimes take a long time to respond to obvious things. Boys, boys, boys. This is also why large companies can sometimes take a long time to respond to obvious things. If you've ever worked in corporate, you know how annoying this is. Because even internal shit takes forever. So this is something that, you know, younger folk won't know because they've never been in it. So there is significant inertia built into the system because of the fear of loss, and this is before we get into issues such as process, policy, complexity, and lack of information. So for a company like to make a change, it requires a business case that shows why changing the status quo is preferable. What is the business case for Genshin should give more rewards? Per Thesis 1, Genshin doesn't see other gacha games as peer competitors, so comparison to peers doesn't work. Thesis 2, attracting more players via free rewards isn't critical either. Thesis 3A, don't get fired rule. Decisions in companies are made by people. A lot of people don't like losing their jobs. Proposing new ideas means taking on risk. Do you want to be the dumbass whose name was on the internal memo that proposed a bad idea? Do you want to be the exco, opco committee member who said yes to that dumb idea? This is the don't get fired rule. If you like your job, don't do anything that will get you fired. Especially if you happen to work in an industry where there's going to be a lot of layoffs. This can lead people to making decisions that are safer for themselves but worse for the company overall, but the decision gets made nonetheless. Thesis 3B, avoid one-way doors if you can. An important lesson in decision making is avoiding one-way doors where possible. This means avoid making decisions which are super difficult to reverse. Something like increasing the average Primogem income is a one-way door. Chat. This, I think, is something that a lot of people that are not really logical have a really difficult time understanding. This is a subject that might seem really obvious to you from the start. But have you ever actually gone and calculated how much Primogem income you get on average per event per patch? Like the people that do post those things? And you realize they have a really narrow range, which they keep it at, right? And they don't usually want to increase it or decrease it. Say, for example, Honkai Star Rail no longer gives 10 pulls for 2 patches. Guess what happens? A lot of entitled people are going to be banging on the door. Entitlement is everywhere. Entitlement is even, you know, entitlement's like, you can't remove entitlement. It's always going to be there, right? Customer expectations are sticky. If you increase income, people will expect it to stay there. You can't take it back. And now you need to refactor this all into your revenue models forever. MiHoYo has an internal estimate about how much the average player rolls. Since they fully control the in-game Primogem economy, this means they can set Primogem income to balance free versus paid rolls to achieve a revenue target. So changing free Primogem income has a long-lasting effect on not only this month's revenue, but all future months as well. It's a very big decision to make from a finance perspective, especially at this scale with a mature product. Tactical giveaways such as for marketing would therefore likely need to go through an approval process. It likely can't be made solo by marketing the way it could at a small company anymore. Take for example if MiHoYo had panicked about Tower of Fantasy and given away free income. Chat. This what if is so crazy to think about. If MiHoYo panicked about TOF and copied their strategy of giving free pulls, things would be a lot different. But they didn't. MiHoYo did not. They did not really bat an eye after like a month. Do you feel like taking that career risk? What you can do, however, is nothing. Just kick that can down the road, wait and see, come back and make the decision later. This is a two-way door. It's a decision you make with low cost. You can always change your mind later. Maybe later on you have better information, you make a better decision. So chat, that's the overall post. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in. But I think it's a really good read. And I also think that you can become better educated about how these systems work. I think if you read through this, you kind of, if you didn't know these things before, and if you understand and, analyze this for your own benefit, right? Read this if you want on your own time, or just go off based on what I said, whatever, right? Here's one thing though that I think I took away from this that I think is not spoken here and needs to be said. Companies do not always operate perfectly. So this thesis kind of assumes that hoyoverse acts in the best interests of its games from a pure corporate standpoint, which I don't think necessarily holds true. Companies make mistakes all the time. They test the waters all the time. They do things that are incorrect like a lot of the time, right? So a lot of these things that we talk about, the conversion method, they're not gonna do it perfectly, right? But they're learning about it. I appreciate you guys yapping. I know a lot of you guys wanna yap. Chat, I think one thing that we still should not throw away is player sentiment. That's this part. Player satisfaction. In my opinion, I think that whoever made the decision regarding player sentiment made an incorrect decision. So someone who had to make a choice for this made a mistake. Are there more comments on this guy below? I think they ran out of space. Did they? It's just footnotes and conclusion stuff. They made a TLDR of their thingy, and they made annotations of. Dude, they actually wrote like a PhD paper on this. It's kind of crazy. They went full out, footnote style gameplay on this one, which I respect. So Mr. BB, with this whole uproar about rewards being additional 3 polls, the same thing was said in the 3.5 stream. So why wasn't there an uproar then?
Fuck me, dude.
Sorta related, pretty cool.
I don't know. The CN community decided that this time they weren't going to have it. Honkai Starro probably had a big one. Yeah, I think Honkai Starro was a big impact. Honkai Starro being out wasn't out last year. I think there's been a lot of bottled up stuff. So chat. Yeah, with regards to this post, I feel like companies aren't perfect. They do also make mistakes, and I feel like they did. I think Hoyo did make a mistake on player sentiment here, in my opinion. I think that you can achieve some of these things without making your Genshin player base super unhappy. Like, here's where I'm coming from. Genshin can still be really slow with quality of life. They can still give like 10 summons for Lunar New Year every single year, and it would not affect them. People who want more than that, well, they're just gonna be yapping and complaining as they would usually do, right? I think what will be a hard pill to swallow if we take this, if we take this post that some of it is true. None of it could be true, but I feel like we will never know, so we can only go off of what is as close to what we can believe as possible. I think the most difficult pill to swallow is that Honkai Star Rail will always be treated better than Genshin. I don't think that will change. All I know is that HSR gives us another 5-star for anniversary. Genshin players will lose their shit. Genshin's getting a lot of shit for this, but you realize that like there's a lot of companies who have different branches for games and stuff and do all these different things, and none of their teams do anything remotely the same as each other. Having the expectation that each game should always meet the precedent of the game that sets the bar high is a little bit idealistic, a little bit utopian. Think about it. If every single game had to one-up each other, no one's gonna win. True, I just don't buy the narrative that people say that HSR is more popular than Genshin. That was not mentioned anywhere here. We did not. I'm guessing you're asking a question unrelated to this. Nowhere do we talk about the popularity. We just know for a fact that Genshin's player base is massive, and Hoyo could be trying to convert some of that massive base to Honkai Star Rail. Whether or not Honkai Star Rail is more popular, I don't have any say. I don't know. I don't care what it is. I'm playing both, so it doesn't really matter to me. And also, popularity does not necessarily mean one will get better rewards than the other. Popularity is no correlation to rewards. In fact, I think the only precedent for rewards in a game is if the same category of game does it. Anyways, we're not gonna have the debate on which ones were popular. I think we can definitely say that Genshin has a larger player base. If you equal player base to popularity, then that's where your correlation comes from. But Genshin has a way bigger player base. There is no debate. It could change in the future, but I think Honkai Star Rail still needs a couple months. Zyok said, "Frick you." Give him an XDD. Anyways, chat, I think that was a good discussion. I think we've basically Andy to this enough. I think it makes some good points. I do think that, emotions still matter, player sentiment still matters, and company's not perfect.